Hello, Americans. As the species volume science slash hypervolume science, because part of it requires observation and appreciation of that part of identity, which, for example, is that additional hyper simultaneous, which is why and how we have two eyes other species bodies have it. All exception, nature, demonstration of the same thing. It shows us to watch its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that as means to answer all questions, as means to answer all questions. People speak about four dimensions, for example, leaving out how and why there are only three. And this has to do with how nature demonstrates this, the reason, the correlation. It is how it is 1/3 is grouped 5 distinct ways itself, and it is 3 ways itself. And the difference between that is shown to us, but we have to be a quality of fact treatment nature with all subject treatments. One of the ways that we have been forbid since semi-ancient times. Intersciences, and that's including, even religions. For the same reason the Constitution told us to get the freedom of religion defended. We don't have the freedom of religion defended because they've been putting fake transcripts in databases. Also, it's been with foreign bodies, keeping our own doing this through themselves, per use of location /s. This never went away relative to all kinds of individually bound that come with grouped demonstrations of the same thing. And relativity to where and how simultaneous values are forced left out, where there are relativity with subject treatments. That also comes to where and how the phenomenon of where and how science is abridged. Use words like theory. Where and how the breaching method measures and maintains the sense and sensibilities of the difference of distinct identities of criminal insidiousness, where and how our founders too communicated for us to understand the difference between how it was exploited, the difference between the criminal insidiousness as the 3 branches of government associated with witch trials, Jim Crow laws, and slavery against our founders, who had to counter-extort the other founders. And the difference of that is exploited. I had a conversation about difference with people that are involved with the FBI director that he didn't know that. He knew to an extent. It is recorded. He had to know to an extent at Central Connecticut State University. People all along Route 3 since I was a kid. They're in a ways that demonstrably since before I was born. The interstates and intercities, there's a method that is exploiting as an identity of volume /s, self-valued roles, with names uses, like the names of countries, like when describing things that we are forced to describe, such as shootings in the news, mass shootings, and all that communicated with that is pretended debatable, that is not debatable, and all that communicated with that is simultaneously pretended not debatable, that is wrong. But they're preventing free speech as collusions, also with difference, as countries grouped and together as any voicings of humanity. Otherwise, that body is sensed, even if it is a majority of countries. We could see this when we discern how every body of the species knows all this time when leadership of all communications platforms, I'm asking different ways to forgiveness to be shown simultaneously, because we have to list how it made the 13 extorted spots still fact cheaping nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved, divided from themselves and others. But the laws were so crazy against every single person that our founders were capable of counter extorting 13 positions, names, people that lived there, and having them have no hope of survival without relying on their plan for the republic for which we stand, which is still abridged. And not just because what is debatable or not debatable. Also, there's the difference between the interbranch stacking fake things into databases and or stacking collusions at crime scenes, fact cheaping nature oriented ones, where and how they are increasingly the worst ones, but appear other. Because of where and how, in other words, the campuses are recorded being and having been used by their roles with the intelligence community, where they use truths for lies, where the breaching method knew they would. So they've been used remotely since we were founding all identities of law and convictions by them, including people A through Z. The sciences share an identity. So there are a whole bunch of possessions over the human fact cheaping nature that were employed by a hyper possession that was also there. And it measured and maintained from before those roles with it, where American history started, which is not that long ago, started just to try to become a country. And that's also with a whole bunch of dual citizens, more than that at the same time, who don't care here or there, but for uses of that's the way things are, of the name, of the names of the human volume science, tactically through now systems and as identities, tactical ulterior, from where and how that identity of hyper simultaneous employ our names, all the words in the dictionary to be used, all words / each word is value simultaneously, / value. That is 3. It is 3 ways. Even with metaphysics, there is a trinity that comes also with the value of what came, what really was true always and happened before anyone was around, or before the smallest finite detail now. The value of that only increases distinctly from the order of the finite, from the order of what is active, only temporary in our control. And the simultaneous that comes together with the value of the finite and the value of what is true before that, and the value of a nature of contemplation that doesn't leave out and contemplates what it doesn't know about the future, but it knows that, because that knowledge also shows us to understand more about that and brings us revelations that shows us more about the truth before the smallest finite detail, for example, of America's republic. For example, a recorded, self-valued, criminally foreign influenced re-engineering of the ancient republic, also gotten away with because of criminally foreign influence, self-valued, criminally foreign influence readings of the values of history. We know those databases were criminally foreign influenced. We know all names treatments were. We know slavery and witch trials, and even if the witch trials were made up, we know that they have not been blamed on the breaching method, which is one thing they were about and are about increasingly. And see where and how that is increasingly a scientific value, a part of all answers with American history. All natural questions, to all natural questions simultaneously. It's the same. Inseparable from the same identity of torture, extortion, slavery method /S that had been sustained from some ancient times. There are proofs that a regular transnational criminal enterprise that was mixed with overt criminal enterprises and foreign and domestic bodies that are involved with the law, where they agree about the law and have agreed about the law since before modern religion's messengers know, using the campuses from off them, also using the differences of that to keep screened a breaching method, where and how really and why really. We have psychopaths speaking for calmness and or with aggression. And when people fight who are not doctors know, and the difference of that too, like online, they use mental diagnosis. They're using psychiatry's words that are still criminally foreign influenced. So even if they're made up, all the shootings and things about them in the news, it's a truth used for a lie. They pretend not to perceive that people are speaking. In other words, there are things being reported, even when they're being reported fake. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others, and to fake locations that way. For example, as collusions with people who had already been involved with all sides of criminal and civil cases, and with victims, and with their advocates, and with lawyers on both sides, and with the interbranch switching and forging names and sequences, also planting fake motivations together with foreign bodies. And with the difference of that and their families' roles with it, how they get away with it is how the breaching method shows them too. They have a whole bunch of countries involved, all these countries in the news and their differences that appear different. They have collusions with people who went to campuses in my town that I had nothing to do with. Other is needed, pretended, because of the way they have the military intelligence. What they call the intelligence community is three branches of government, and there's exceptions, an exception tied to that. It's also who brings this to brings this to this prison, who lives next to, who the relative is. See, these branches of government have always been mixed, and the difference of that when they speak about independent branches of government, their family members, they're all mixed with roles with a use of location /S that is criminally foreign influence / hyper criminally foreign influence. For example, I'm not even a lawyer. These are phrases we're going to have to use relative to how the suburbs were designed, tactically denatured, while we know the only means to cause positive more and more were if people were going to self-value collusions with and as people, and then further as identities of industries names. No, as locations names too, because the difference of that is also exploited by the breaching method that uses not just every country sickly distinctly, every grouping, every attempt at adaptation from what since before the founding of each modern nation came as something more finite and something greater that had already been founded and already had been found it as means to keep people saying and pretending whatever and or self-valuing. People ignored relative to this. This is relative to war. These are World Trade Center predicate acts methods roles with the predicate acts in the World Trade Center and with the investigators. How would they be motivated to that? But they're predicate acts with facts, collusions, where and how all formal voicings of the law at countries A through Z make and made convictions and syntactically defend that. There is collusions by that. They have roles consciously through time, intercampuses, and the difference between those campuses, public, private, fire campus, medical campus, they're sticking fake things in there. There are conscious uses of distinct natures of organized crime and of criminal insidiousness natures, including criminal enterprises, at the same time with the difference of them in the interbranch. Use of location /s, where this breaching method employed, where it knew what it caused and maintains, would increasingly cause people to need to blame other things, others, or selves for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, by needing to respond syntactically and or to not respond. Where and how that a question can be answered, how people could be motivated to screen and blame on other things, others, or selves. What really we were communicated to communicate about what really caused Jim Crow laws. Obviously, that which had roles with the torture and extortion and the fact-cheating nature of slavery of our founders, all of them, even the ones who had to counter-extort the other ones, is involved with that answer. A human fact-cheating nature breaching method, a torture /extortion /slavery method, because of the three dimensions, where identity is 1/3/5. Identities of sequence /simultaneous nature, with the phenomena of three natures of itself, the identity of hypersimultaneous, that which is constantly not our species body, not the other species body, but it is that anyway. It is why and how. There are 5 names for the verb. And it is why and how. We're evaluating the value of counting those names. Has relativity to this, where 3 dimensions are with metaphysics too. And it is where and how it is constantly demonstrating to us to appreciate the difference between what is constant and what is variable. Other than we have afforded, a quality of fact should be nature necessary. In other words, we're being forced to be knaves and pretend other, and to get the only way to get away with that is to self-value the science as being and having been abridged, and having blamed other things, others, or selves for the causes of it. Where and how nature increasingly demonstrates that human fact should be nature breaching method, which is manifest 3 ways simultaneously: a torture method, extortion method, slavery method. The psychiatry has been involved with medical campuses, intercities, and interstates, and internations. All the countries in the group and where they have war and peace, and the difference of that, it is measured and maintained effective uses by a breaching method that leaves out how our founders show what nature shows. The identity, the peak identities of sophistication. Speaking for them, having spoken for the law, and all families at all levels, even people that are families that are not interbranch. Someone might go into it. There's a possession of overt criminal enterprises, private ones. There are 15 identity grounds. Identity of relationships to itself. For example, that can be observed when you observe it. A trinity also reveals how to look at it as groupings 5, 10, 15. In other words, 3 groupings of 5. It shows us, nature shows us how one identity of forever nature is making more of itself. To any extent we could discern, which is the value of any subject / s, which is the value of simultaneous. And how we could appreciate, the more simultaneous we could appreciate, and simultaneously, distinctly from the finite. We have grouped identity of relationship to itself, inseparable from all parts, all the smallest detail of any body, as 1/3/5, like the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall /s. Coming in and going out of gases, coming in and going out of water and its elements, finite group and together. And we know it's about positive and negative. And when we examine this and all that, its identity of volume, as any subject /s, its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that, but distinctly from where and how it is not juxtaposed with matter, and where and how it is juxtaposed with matter, and where and how it is any way on both sides. And as no side, it shows that there's a value transfer simultaneously. So nature shows us to appreciate the distinct parts of the body of time the same way. The extent we know is true always of the past. The extent we know is true always of the active here now. And the extent we know is true always of that which is to come. Boxing is fun, one way. Many play. I'll shadow box. At least some pace. Yes, some rest. I tell best. The science is shared. See how boxing, martial arts, and wrestling have a grouped identity. So it can't be appreciated because the Republic and its campuses are abridged. And how to maintain their value of their identity is being voiced at other locations. See, that's why and how it's necessary to understand how and why the suburbs were designed for torture and extortion and the slavery of our factory nature, slavery of our founders before they were born. Oh, what about that? In other words, and the difference between that and who they hurt sickly distinctly, the worst. It is also hyper evidential where they leave out formal and everyone else's opinions, how sickly non-distinctly too is never countered. See, when anybody, individual, grouped or together, tries to use such natures of, some potentials of reason, proper this way, not making excuses, for where and how they never had a difference. They never had a difference. The branch of the government, the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones at the same time, because countries grouped already too. They had self-valued roles with their countries breached through everyone, and everyone pretending other, because where and how it is worst, no one pays attention to it, because the short words, when we are very young, they are replaced, and who cares to speak the natural voice about how and why we're supposed to appreciate nature, how we do as the human volume science. When we hear American history, there's part of it we know. The human volume science is being forced to collusion from some ancient times, and from the people before them. All sides were sick. They were not real potentials. All exception nature that appeared, that were designed to appear to be in demonstration of other, were really in demonstration of the same thing, but no one would tell on that. No one would focus on that. This breaching method put identities of integrity to speak for integrity, why they should be integrity as the law before they were, and knowing they would defend their difference the way they were taught, as knowing that would simultaneously be collusion /S with what really went down at all crime scenes. They're increasingly collusions, all sides. Other, communications is simultaneously greater than and more finite than what is said. But also than that, but also by what is greater and more finite than that. This is why how we're supposed to let the hyper invisible but still discernible lead. So even when you see people appearing to be lying about things, like kids, and the difference of who's lying in truth and who has the right to tell the truth. In other words, there are answers to what caused all these shootings in the cities, sickly distinctly from in the suburbs. And there are names involved if we want to leave out forgiveness. But those names most responsible as our sides. I'm not saying, in other words, it's differentially, and the difference between that is being used by the overt criminal enterprises, the private ones, and the intelligence community, and the three branches of government, and the difference of that. Lawyers on all sides of cases, and victims in their courts appointed victims advocates. New Britain Superior Court has roles with the FBI, where and Hartford courts, and Connecticut District Court, and with other agencies, and with regular police forms, and the difference of that, used by the same family members involved with predicate acts with facts and predicate acts methods before they took their oaths. For example, people involved interbranch, retired and standing. This is a method that knew that they would do that, value oaths, and then increasingly being perjury predators, pretending to be against that, and or self-valued roles with the difference, where and how that's relative too, because everyone's a knave. So KNAVE, and everyone's simultaneously pretending other for the breaching method. There are three identities of short words prevented simultaneously. And the difference between the value of what came first is increasingly relative with all finite grouped in simultaneous details. And also because the involvement of foreign bodies is recorded being and having been consciously used also by a present hyper foreign body that involved with keeping blamed on other things, others, or selves, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, such as how the suburbs were tactically denatured for torture, extortion, and slavery, and for reliances upon more and more as collusions, were the only allowed to be manifest. Collusions through economic value systems employed by the breaching method from some ancient times, knowing how names would be used, like America, like we, like pronouns. They keep repeating the subjects about their roles with sexual, what they call sexual experts and medical. The medical community has ones with badges and judges fabricating stuff into databases because they have timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at shopping centers and at malls. For example, at corners of streets, on all sides of people's houses, where and how this breaching method /S employed every oath-taking body effectively to measure and maintain them. Self-value collusions with predicate acts with facts, with criminal insidiousness, delivery system methods, self-value roles, needs, and or nature, and the relativity of the difference of that. Where and how the answers are right here, easy. And where they're hard, they're exactly opposite of how American history is easy and hard. Same thing with every modern country because they're getting over on the simultaneous nature because it shows the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous. It shows the difference, but this is a hyper invisible distinct. The verb is invisible but still discernible. Hyper additional part of the identity of each thing in action it describes. It shows where they are transferring their value to each other. A verb, and a subject, and the difference of themselves, which is relative to where and to how we discern the identity of reason, the identity of logic. Being and having been tactical terriers and experts on it could afford to have discerned, individually grouped and together as our country, suits and ties, counters, all exceptions and exception nature, cannot defend that as an array. Their defenses of that and all of group differences, but the self-value rules were that used and have to measure and maintain who's going to make proper, speak for nature, what it actually is and has been capable of teaching us. When people make questions about the difference between men and women, boys and girls, this breaching method measures and maintains where and how what is simple and complicated is lied about by the formal identities of law, simply distinctly from the other identities of criminal insidiousness nature. Because you don't bring that question up without addressing how the suburbs were designed to make cities where this was designed ahead of time, knowing that unities would have to emerge, simultaneously wanting and needing to be independent from where and how countries grouped to, war collusion against every individual body grouped and together, where and how we are manifest as fact, truth, and nature quality /IES and /nature by this only increasing identity of volume. And it is volume as value as nature / nature as value as the only identity of volume that makes more of itself. per its identity of relationship to itself and the increasing value of that. To answer the question of how, is to understand the Trinity as cipher, but also as decipher. As decipher, but also as decipher. See, the writers of the Quran and of the Old Testament were conscious. The method by and with. For example, the human fact human nature breaching method, a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. These are one of the things we're supposed to address, where and how the beginning of the Old Testament says the names of the people of the sciences will come together. And this is the only part you have to know, right to here. And so people don't even know that part. The people who countering this breaching method knew that the people who would defend their books, the Quran and the Old Testament, and the difference of that, it would be used by the breaching method, used remotely, where how motivations it increasingly needs to hide its roles with the motivations of foreign countries, intergrouped in every individual country. They never had possession. We never had possession of America's name. Our founders told us to teach about this. We're supposed to address the extortion of George Washington honestly. To get away with not doing this, they made people consciously self-value. Our military leaders, just for their position, not just, because it's used them remotely, all location/S. And it never stopped being a foreign body /IES. The singular method maintaining the plural parts and grouped, and that was sustained at the same location/S. And then everyone speaks about instances, increasingly the difference between that and the names next to all locations, all natures of relativity. The difference of it is also being and have been used criminally foreign influence. There are people that are at medical locations, for example, and even if they make up these shootings all the time, they have roles with predicate acts with facts real sick. They have roles with crime acts and methods between campuses, where and how it is recorded, being and has been consciously used, where the identities of law are using the phenomenon of where and how they have all these different countries involved with the same campuses together, and how those campuses also have roles with predicate acts at other campuses and natures of industries, locations, and the difference of that is used. And see, this is where people speak and say, okay, we'll leave it to the courts. And the courts had collusion with the breaching method. They still have collusion with the breaching method, effectively using and having used Jim Crow laws. You don't even have the experts on it, or do you even know what Jim Crow laws are about? Jim Crow laws were about that hyper predicate acts delivery system method / predicate acts delivery system method, predicate acts with facts method, and the difference of that as criminal insidious nature delivery system method, where and how it counts, where and how we are quality with fact human nature, but where and how we are quality with the value of what comes and came first. So already, by the time kids go into each grade, there are already predicate acts stacked into roles and facts and manipulations of sense and sensibilities of other people at other locations. People involved with Quinnipiac University have roles interstates with medical corruption and other natures of organized crime, as places involved with polling, where and how they keep the parties fighting with each other, and screened what has complete possession of every work, everyone around, all natures of difference, the difference between each individual leader of each modern country. This is a method that measures and maintains. We don't have appreciated how reason works, how correlation nature works. You stupid jerks. It forces, or 2 cents, even if that's a majority. So we would have found these answers. Also donate a list of ways we can make a product owned by a virtual, so we can start making like, for example, to make a non-lethal device /S at the points involved with this, because the campuses and the difference of their family members and the difference of the roles with the predicate acts at the campuses, next to the campuses, because these are names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. The court's appointed advocates, people with the hallways of the court's names, including judges, including with roles with remote uses of their difference /S, Black and female or African American. I don't know, but that, African. What if it came from an island? What if it was American? In other words, they're playing with color. This breaching method employed other communicated for Black pupils, whites of eyes, therefore for color, than with nature communicates with it. And simultaneously, so overtly / insidiously, per a method and functions by everyone leaving that out, where the breaching method is also left out. Otherwise, that body is sensed, even if as a group, even if it has grouped countries, relative to the employments of all natures of employments, including in titles, can't defend their identities of logic and afford to discern what is actually capable of being discerned, which is collusion with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. The difference of that insidiousness of the identities of logic A through Z and or the ones next to them. So this is a method that measured and maintained. He said, she said, natures at all locations, used by a breaching method, effectively used to measure and maintain self-valid collusions with communications where and how, effectively measured and maintained, are all natures of true patriotism in every modern country. Criminally foreign influence, or that body in one's tied to them, sense that person speaking for correlation nature properly. And when there's debates about this and about motivations, where people describe their motivations, when they describe their passions and emotions, they are only allowed to be heard if it's going to be used to force descriptions of systems or details that show relativity as systems tactical terror than the one that is true always. So in other words, why and how the Constitution was begotten on a bridge is no joke. Harvard Hospital has an Institute of Living on its campus. Now, this is where and how they have words like healthcare, and they have initiatives to go against misinformation, where the identity of the ground. The agencies have roles with Harvard Hospital. The military has roles with Harvard Hospital. All natures of investigators. They have roles with medical locations and with on-off the state judicial branch offices, on-off the state corrections offices, and with the difference between the names next to them. They've been collusions with where and how their state offices and their houses and the houses next to them are affected by uses of predicate acts with facts, rules, self-value. Otherwise, that person is sentenced. There are people all along Ridge Road and all along Route 175 that I don't know at all, and other ones had roles with wire crime acts and methods, as roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, where how interbranching foreign had timed collusions consciously with torture, extortion, and slavery. So this involves mayors too. People with the name Violet had the intelligence community take pictures of me near him, to pretend I had conversations with him and other people tied to him with the military, and on and off the state of Connecticut state capitol too, in the buildings next to it, has something to do with foreign and domestic military collusions leading up to the World Trade Center attack in New York City, in Washington, and in New York, and in the court next to it, with and as names who have roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases, as collusions at crime scenes / the hypercrime scene, which is overt / insidious, and how the overt has been denied, how they get away with denying what is overt. Like, for example, in New York City, cities across the world, in Russia and in America, the suburbs were designed before our founders were born. And while the countries were being formed, they were forced to self-value the names of humanity and defenses of and groupings individually grouped and together, even down to everyone around everyone, and all natures of relationships to everyone. Everyone's, because of the relativity of how everyone's attached to fake and to change the words, to fake and change ties to others, and or the difference of the motivation. Because this is increasingly where and how people are used non-distinctly criminally foreign influence, all at the same time against themselves. That's being exploited. People want that counter. They don't understand how to do it because of the nature of debate. Manifest the way it is because of this. So we have to ask ourselves, what were witch trials about, even if they were made up? Right after I was speaking about that in a YouTube video or live stream video. This is breaking news. I'm not even a journalist. WFSB has the intelligence community of Connecticut, also with names next to their location, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with predicate acts with facts methods like wire crime methods, also with a whole bunch of people tied to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. People all along Route 3 have roles using all sides in cases, in the courts, and the locations involved, lawyers, different their sources, planting the same sequence shifts, same fake motivations with foreign bodies. So the same house /S involved since I was a kid was also at other where they came from before that, and with families that used to live here that are increasingly involved with names intercities that are planting evidences on my street, where how we can discern what is actually recorded. In other words, they're making us use each other's names and or not, where and how they're touching everyone to faked and changed communications in words. They're putting whole fake transcripts intercities too. The confessions, there's a whole bunch of different ways the breaching method uses confessions. And it is distinct from how the church uses confessions. The religions took humanity to counter positions, but there's only one way to finish the liberation of what they were together, non-distinctly, about regarding how there's criminally foreign influence, voicings of law, of its nature, and of its identity. which is additionally how we are additionally grounded in the rest of the Earth's special difference is voicings. So reason uses the difference between uses the difference between special difference and a special difference, and with a slash between that. Nature shows us Earth's difference. There are proofs that the ancients, it is more probable too, that than what is convicted regarding the value of the ancients. I mean, what is gleaned through the ages. One thing that is constant is self-valued and uses of self-valued, criminally foreign influenced identity, the grounds of identity of relationship to itself by a breaching method. That is also self-valued, criminally foreign influenced uses of database relationships and the republic's functions, and where it relied upon the groupings of humanity the way it assigned it. There are proofs that the republic was revealed and English was revealed, appreciating and using, needing to be taught properly, appreciating where alpha and omega and yin yang and all parts of languages individually grouped in together, they're just revealed to teach about the hyper additional nature, the identity of the hyper simultaneous, which is some things constantly that are increasingly valued to discern syntactically. So nature describes how we think and how reason works, tactical ulterior. Then still criminally foreign influenced families could afford to discern. And so to keep such denied, they have exceptions and exception nature employed where and how they make a lot of money this way. So Rixiam Faglione is one of the ones who recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, has roles with predicate acts, with wire crime acts and methods, with agencies, with an O'Brien family, and at corners of streets, involved with also the abuses of the leaders of kids, as collusions with child offenders before they were caught, including leaders of the kids, a principal child abuser. He has roles with names with Rick C.M. Faglione has roles with predicate acts with a Brian Silver and a Brendan, and people with the name Brendan Leahy, more than one, and women in their family that work at Hartford Hospital with various courts, judges, and prosecutors involved personally through time and professionally criminally foreign influence, timed collusion with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people ducking behind where and how they have pretended integrity and legitimate uses of where and how they have hundreds of countries shared, actually, and then how it manifests at campuses. Countries involved with nuclear weapons and things like that, and being able to transverse the earth, but still collusion with fact-driven nature. So we're going to have to appreciate the difference between positive as criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, not just negative treatments. And we're going to have to appreciate where and how there are collusions syntactically, but needs to have self-value, criminal insidious natures of positive and uses of that at the same time with negative ones, because there's also singular use of that, where a singular identity of logic is maintaining the plural ones, criminally foreign influence, and roles preventing mandated law, changing so that there are digital police forms. This breaching method employs types of jobs, and it employs overt criminal enterprises and private ones in the interbranch in their campuses. Again, all sides and cases is used to effectively lock down in the news at the same time. News when I was a kid, WFSB, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, since I was a kid. They have roles on and off campuses, planting predicate acts with facts roles, identity theft, fraud, slander. For example, And where that is not true, the difference of that is also has been used by the judges and their family members involved with this, which is simultaneous collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and with needs to have forgiveness appreciated because there was also foreign bodies involved with this. They've been child abuse since they were kids, blaming other things other than themselves, even when correctly, wrongly, exactly the way it needs. As collusions too, with the exceptions, not as the interbranch, but as the people tied to them. And the difference between that is also self-value by them increasingly being having been used better than perfectly, where and how they keep self-defended uses of truth for lies. So they have a certain type of victim as each branch of government's member, is person, everyone around them. Same way they have the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the insidiousness of the identities of logic like A through Z, like regarding the value of voting, which can be discerned where and how it has relativity to where it can be discerned where it is used, where it doesn't is not value. And part of the reason, in other words, anyone denies an honest voicing of New York City, of the suburbs, anyone who denies the honest voicing of the suburbs, let alone of New York City, they're going to have inherent like of honest voicing shows that criminally foreign influenced identities of sciences and the self-value uses of them and of their differences. When I say the sciences, that means the three branches of government too. Means their names on all sides of criminal and civil cases. Means they're lawyers as collusions, timed with the news too. Planting, making up, and hiding more and more simultaneously, and the difference of that is used. Nature uses, as this breaching method does, difference tactical ulterior from how nature does. But but understanding it and appreciating how nature does and how it is a mimic, that it just has to maintain self-value uses of words like America, of words like we. See, that coalition and the Americans who had involvements with it are Americans that are dual citizenships and more. Americans involved with that identity theft, fraud, slander method. They're pretending is complicated where it's simple. They're pretending it's simple where it's complicated because they're getting over on the simultaneous nature. And it comes with it comes with more, which we could describe and discern as I'm getting over on the / hyper simultaneous nature. Where and how, again, too, three identities of sequence nature are grouped. And each part of themselves is a sequence / simultaneous nature. One way. And then simultaneously it is the other sequence nature. Computers are manifest the way they are because they have to mimic this. Further, no. Boolean logic and lists are used distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. / hyper simultaneously only allowed appreciated, where increasingly only allowed respected. Otherwise, they just change your words anyway. Our criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments with syntax and uses of it or uses of it. I don't know if Aiello Home Services is connected to a Joe Aiello, but there are men and women and boys and girls in the past involved with child offenders and various juxtaposed distinct natures of organized crime and federal evidences crimes, federal rules of evidences crimes, sequence shifts, identity theft, fraud, slander, and fake motivation plantings that a Joe Aiello had when I was a kid and then as an adult. These are also people switching sequences, switching names with roles with judges and prosecutors at crime scenes with people doing that too, and uses of the difference of it as people involved with the World Trade Center attack and with shoreline communities, and with like a little magic trick too. They're attaching everyone around each other to fake and change words. WFSB lied about the outcome of legal cases with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with his co-defendants, and with their lawyer, involved also with various natures of courts, families, interagencies planted, and have collusions with uses of locations where they hide life used remotely, never stop being used remotely. That's one of the answers relative to what Jim Crow laws are about, and what how they get away with it is where and how they've employed narratives by who does homework, and the difference when they're having conversations that are real between people, they're measuring and maintaining left out where and how being communicated to kids are how conscious collusions, planting fake motivations with foreign bodies, are people consciously preventing the actual quality of others from being discerned, as rules with identity theft, fraud, slander method. And they're preventing counters to this, and they're lying about the motivation, preventing writing. And they've been doing this and pretending for legitimate reasons they wouldn't be able to do it if you get them in writing. All exception in nature show where all writing has been criminally foreign. They're forcing. They have, for example, there's a recent video. If you look on the videos of the Judging Freedom with Judge Napolitano, he has a Judging Freedom YouTube channel. And he has a video that was recent, and he's speaking about how the judge, I believe he fined Donald, the former president, for being rude to I believe it was one of the workers of the court. I think it was a clerk, a judge's clerk. There was a judge's clerk who was seated in the Ninth Circuit Court on the side of the plaintiffs, right before the World Trade Center attack. And there was the son of one of the sources of one of the plaintiffs. And before that, this is right before the World Trade Center attack, in the Ninth Circuit Court, right next to the World Trade Center. These are all from inside that court. Before that, they'd already post-dated inside the court legal papers to pretend they had been time-stamped late. They had, but later it was proven after the World Trade Center attack, they had been properly time-stamped. Now that led to a 2006 district court part of a case in Connecticut, which the intelligence community at locations next to Fox Connecticut News and next to WTNH and next to other news locations, they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed they have rules and predicate acts with facts, with names at campuses, with methods of it, identity theft, fraud, slanders that are also through time connected, where and how this breaching method measures and maintains effectively other communicated for modern nations by themselves, for themselves, than they actually communicate, and fake motives pretended by themselves, as it knew they would. So there are a whole bunch of judges tied to their family members involved with the same house/S with the other branches of government. And a whole bunch of names have been planting lie progressions into cities and tied confessions, because there is uses of people where they're pretending people are friends, pretending people are enemies, and they're leaving out the roles with foreign bodies, with people's motivations, and they're putting fake things in databases, including interbranch collusions with crime scenes, including uses of vertical and horizontal Confession's relative. Oh, but that's debatable. No, the things that aren't debatable. The branch of government have collusions where they've been using the right to lie, right to commit crimes where they don't have it. And they've been getting away with it because they're being used remotely. This is not to say who's to punish or what. They're doing that and have done that to hide even when they're all actual motivations, like their kids' involvements, like the kids of others that work with them, all their descriptions of all their emotions, the emotions of others. They are effectively self-out, used to measure and maintain. Other than some emotions are used by nature to show us if someone's describing our emotions and why and the causes of them or of others. And they're leaving out the smallest finite detail or the value of what came first or relative lies and things. Then, in other words, we can discern it's in the furtherance of systems tactile terror from nature's that is positive unto itself, where and how nature teaches us about the difference between criminal insidious natures of positive treatments, not just the difference between criminal insidious natures of negative treatments. So we have collusions, we have the collusions with that because there is an identity. Every identity has relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. So we could discern the identity of the hypersimultaneous because there's 5 distinct identities of possession over while as the value of every subject and over while as the value of why and of how. The verb has 5 names. Every identity is about how it is hyper additional nature. That is also about how we are hyper native pure and about how indigenous populations, nature is telling their consciousness to explain how and why they are being forced to litigate as, like, for example, Native Americans in positions leaving out the hyper native impositions against us all, which are the hyper additional. In other words, the ground below the feet of the Native American tribes hurt worst and the ones that have best done damage control to it. Because the ground below everyone, even the most beautiful countries, it's all landscape theater. It cannot defend itself and afford discerned, as the breaching method knew. See, forgiveness is for all kinds of reasons at once, too, because people are lying about what they perceive when others speak. So what I wrote that is clear, and what I speak that is clear, and what others speak that is clear, and what they write that is clear. And what is not, that is also exploited. They lie about that. And that can be discerned, but we have to force the quality of fact treatment nature with writing. That is being prevented. So they have the help with of the presidents with descriptions of things and defenses of themselves and their identities of logic that can't defend themselves and afford a leader to be the quality of fact treatment nature that could admit, let alone overcome properly, the roles of criminal insidiousness nature / hyper criminal insidiousness nature, like wrongdoers, wrongdoings, predicate acts with facts roles. See, the prisons and their stewards and their campuses too have roles with the interbranch never had. They never one of them that had an identity. All exception nature that impaired to be in demonstration, other demonstration, the same thing. So it's important to understand where and how and why. It's really easy to understand, and little kids could understand. It was a predicate acts with facts delivery system method involved. That already been sustained. already forced to defend themselves. The phenomenon of the names of countries and using their names as systems tactical ulterior from the one that is hypernative pure and would have answered all our questions had we used all words and definitions completely honestly. So our military has been criminally foreign influence. This breaching method measured them and maintains that they didn't communicate honestly about the extortion of George Washington, about how we got into economic positions employed by a breaching method for torture, extortion, slavery, and or simultaneously for denials of that, and or to blame other things, others, ourselves, to increasingly screen that which nature is actually demonstrating, which is the presence of a breaching method as a scientific value with all subject treatments. So there are people in the Little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons. They represent them as mathematical values, but this is where and how. This is by a science that is greater than and more value, greater than and more finite than math's volume / S science. But then while as it is why and how math is about relativity. They've used the words relativity as theory, where and how it is measured and maintained, where they have identities of the sciences. The names of the sciences will self-value and do self-value uses of abridged convictions of their voicings by the sciences and or by their natures uses at the identity ground locations of the sciences. This is also per how all long roads and routes and original conjunctions to those originally counter-extorted locations, how they stayed incapable, are maintained too, incapable of defending their uses of any ground voicing, any sequence relativity voicing. Any, there is a method. It means by correlation that all formal identities of law can't afford discerns at the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and how they have countries grouped involved. A Justin Klavinskis and a Mark Violet and a Leahy family. They have roles with foreign and domestic medical families. A DeMauro family does too. And with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin. And they have West Hartford locations involved and names involved. Now, they have some that are unmarked police forms that they demonstrate, they hide behind that truth. They pretend people, there are criminally foreign influence ways to pretend people are saying bad things about police when we need to respond to them roles with predicate acts on our streets. Increasingly, the difference between them and the overt criminal enterprises and private ones that is also recorded being and having been used consciously. The difference between criminal insidiousness, natures of motivations, and names uses by the identities of the families as kids and adults of the unions too. So a whole bunch of people recorded, and Paul Zano and Brian Bonin confirmed, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles all along Route 3 with the intelligence community since they were kids, and all along Two Rod Highway with judges, family members. They didn't say that. No, they know that to an extent that's plausible. Because also they speak through each other. These are also people with the school boards involved with so many things so long they have to hide life because of self-value. They're attaching kids to fake uses of drugs. Same people that are involved with the whole families together through time, only ones allowed at the locations to at forensics locations, collusions with medical locations. predicate acts methods roles. They're putting fake transcripts, fake conversations with doctors, including ones with badges, into databases. So the FBI has roles with names through time next to Hartford Hospital and with the military, foreign and domestic, leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. UPS recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They have roles with names on off Trinity College and Central Connecticut State University, with the intelligence community, with other names in the news, like Russia, like Ukraine, Israel, as roles with them on with predicate acts on off Trinity College and on off Central Connecticut State University, also everywhere they go. Same thing. See, all that. See, then they want to pretend it's personal. There's means by nature to show how each of the sciences, each of the locations /s, have roles, self-value with uses of criminally foreign influence, fact, treatment, nature-oriented predicate acts, including ones that are after a fact of them, to hide them, to keep them. In other words, they're used remotely. They're bringing things before courts and having people go to prison and lying about their nature the whole time because they have collusions with men and women and kids at the same time with the fake narratives, and where relative to how they get away with and got away with forcing that quality of fact treatment nature simultaneously, overtly / insidiously, criminally foreign influence, improper and dishonest. Who's going to deny that honest and legitimate science and human potential and means out of nowhere has spoken for New York City will have an inherent active and progressive to their logic? The only way they could defend it is to self-value criminally foreign influence, fact treatment nature, quality aspects of nature with their convictions, simultaneously with relative delusions and differential relativity of that, which is also, again, where we have to appreciate a special difference, or how reason uses it. Tactical terror from how the experts of it pretend and have pretended. They have roles with predicate acts, with facts, methods of preventing people from being organized and pretending other, because they have little stupid punks. I don't even have to see it said. I know they've been telling people, "Well, do this. These are some things you could do," because they want to justify how they defend their jobs. And their roles with identities of law involved. There are lawyers also planting evidences on off medical campuses originally still. Now see how the economics were employed for this torture, extortion, slavery method, and fake integrity as the military collusions too. Right against George Washington and James Madison. See Marbury versus Madison. Make sure that Wethersfield police apologize to the parents and to the kids for their uses of their own kids and the ones intercities. There's ones with the name O'Neill that the media and that recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed is involved. Also with whiting forensics. Whiting forensics has the Saudis they forced through time and other countries, people with Mexico, people with Puerto Rico, involved in the difference of that, involved with names with the military, foreign and domestic, with the World Trade Center predicate acts, and with identity thefts and fraud slanders before that, against everyone too, with uses of black and white tactical terror. These are KKK themed, black themed, military police, and women, judges. That's their sources. At the same time, collusions with child defenders, leaders of kids that they forced while they're pretending fake motivations, because there's fake integrity at interbranch locations. Judge Napolitano on the YouTube channel of Judging Freedom, he reported that he had, when he began as a judge in New Jersey, I fought in New Jersey one time. That's one of those places there are a lot of murders. And it's like, in other words, there's the relativity of where and how the suburbs were designed for the torture and extortion and fact treatment nature slavery of our founders. George Washington told us only to deal telling no lies with the extortion of himself. But that brings up the torturer's method and the extortion. It brings up the employment, says value nature systems, tactical ulterior from how nature uses value. And therefore has hypersyntactical possession, hyperpossession over our syntax. But that is denied that hypernative quality of fact, human nature, quality of its identity of relation to itself and the value of that, and or what came first. So they have the kids of the three branches of government and or the exceptions tied to them. The difference of that is also used, but it's used increasingly. So there's corruption and it never went away as the value of interbranch names, as the value of exceptions tied to them, like the prisons. When did the prisons stop being collusion with criminally foreign influence? They have not stopped being collusions. They are recorded through time, involve juxtaposed with military, Coast Guard. They have databases, roles, narratives, and natures regarding their roles with election spots and integrity. Can't deal with it. Obviously, they haven't dealt with how the databases were used by the breaching method, honestly. And that has been used remotely, let alone when now there are computers. Now there are additional. See, this puts additional apparent motivation to screen its own, where and how it's an answer, where how the other is spoken for those answers. The kids aren't going to do homework, or they're going to do it as criminal and citizens natures, valuing criminal and citizens natures of positive and negative treatments as collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, because there are timed uses of the difference of that and the interbranch family members at the same time as collusions. The extended family members of foreign and domestic medical families, collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at corners of streets and of buildings. So a whole bunch of people at Trinity College recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that there's a Oliveri family, and there are ones with the name Collusion who had roles with professors, people in the intelligence community that were their teachers growing up and tied to their teachers growing up, who have been planting predicate acts with facts and roles with other natures of untimely deaths and uses of them and of murders that were connected at the same time. And then they used it again as roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders that they know were motivated. So, you can't leave out the directors of the FBI's involvements. There are proof. There's a guy looked just like James Comey with New Britain Superior Court. James Comey is one of the ones involved with New Britain Superior Court, planting evidences on all sides of campuses, intercities, and with names positioned on the campuses where and how there are relative uses of nonverbal confessions and demonstrations. So there are people with the intelligence community associated with the Rock Hill campuses and Wethersfield campuses, leaders who are then now further involved with child abuses and with names with elderly homes and with the military, criminally foreign influence, intercities next to the campuses names used by the intelligence community, where how this breaching method knew that it could measure and maintain only fake identities of law, manifest where and how it employed black and white to communicate tactical ulterior from what nature communicates, and or to exploit that having been, leaving out the relativity of that, which is again that a bunch of things generated from that breaching method, demonstrating that we have been in our system's tactical ulterior from the one that is positive onto itself, not as criminal and citizens nature. So even if countries agree to take part with things like slavery, the breaching method effectively knew nature would continue to demonstrate that with negative value nature progressions, acts in nature, acts like predicate acts, natures like criminal insidiousness nature. So there are people that the breaching method showed them where and how it uses them remotely. It shows them they already used words like crimes, certain type of victim slash hyper victim, victim predator, hyper predator collusion with predicate acts with facts and with motivations planting, speaking for integrity anyway. In other words, like regarding what's going on with crime in our states and cities, like in homelessness. They have all counters to such involved with that torture slash extortion slash slavery method, which is manifest where it was manifest. Our founders also demonstrably need us to communicate about how it was sickly distinctly against themselves and everyone to keep how sickly non-distinctly functional by the breaching method, because if someone would then describe it, they're describing names with and things with value nature systems, uses are already used, already dependent on qualities of fact, nature that can't afford that. It can't defend that and afford discern. All that is discernible just with proper subject treatment of any subject. It does not leave out and shares the same way the scientists do. How and why it shares. How do you know? In other words. So, little tricks with facts and delusions interbranch too. Individually grouped and together, we have to address them. We have to have mandated law followed. Even if it was made up, all the things in the news with the shootings in the schools, there was recorded self-valued roles with in between these with predicate acts with facts methods, and the school resource officers are pretending there are like they'll pretend it's debatable, but it's not debatable. It's recorded. They have roles with identity theft, frauds, planting evidences, and with conscious uses of the differences of as timed collusions with a whole bunch of different countries and people all along Route 3, where and how it has he said, she said, and wire crime acts and methods that also involve through those private companies and their roles with the intelligence community, planting fake transcripts as wire crime acts methods. Only people allowed to speak about evidences. Russians do this against their own too. It's demonstrable through how there's a Peruta family who's involved with identity thefts and frauds. It has something to do with how he's Russian, with other Russians, involved with identity theft, fraud, slavery with other countries too, and the difference of that involved with Wethersfield Police Chief Centron and their roles along Elm Streets in Wethersfield and Rocky Hill, which are in other conjunctions to Griswold Street. Also, people with predicate acts with the World Trade Center recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They had conversations with involving my name, people tied to me, the ways, peripherally and things like that, with the corners of streets, on Griswold Street, which there's the phenomenon of those people forced by others to pretend that stuff as collusions with relative home break-ins through the time. And then again, as uses of them recorded that came parallel with them, had nothing to do with those additional motivations and timed collusions of foreign and domestic bodies involved, including the Witness Protection Program involved with the names increasingly on Griswold Street, who are planting evidences, timed collusions on campuses and off campuses. So a whole bunch of people recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed the intelligence community had involved Eric Klotz, and he has family members and neighbors. I don't even know them. They attach everyone to fake conversations with each other, fake ties to each other, fake natures of ties to each other, fake motivations planting. There's a Kerr family and there's a DeMorrow family also recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirmed they have involvements with them, with foreign and domestic military in overt criminal enterprises and the witness protection program and their roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers, victims and victims advocates, and the interbranch switching and forging names, and people with the hallways, planting fake motivations, planting fake evidences and communications, where and how they're confessing and have confessed their roles criminally, foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought since founding. When did the courts, would they say and would they don't say? In other words, black pupils, here, I'll show you how to get New York City free and all the means of pay are out of nowhere. In other words, plus the people in New York City in those buildings need not just injunctive reliefs. They need, it's of a nature that can only be realized if we allow every and any individual to demonstrate when we catch them fake together, and the difference between the interbranch and they have roles with torture methods. They're pretending is about corrections. You know how they call it the Department of Corrections. They're speaking about criminals as they are predicate acts with facts natures. So the World Trade Center has roles with psychiatry, with all kinds of natures of organized crime, including medical. And while they're still tactically delusions raw. And so they self-value, know when things pop off and wars go off. Know how that's simultaneously while they're defending that. They're self-valuing how that could have been stopped. Just admit what our founders told us to admit. You have Americans that are still a majority. You know, the majority doesn't want it, doesn't realize. They're still forcing us to be self-valued collusions with uses of fake identity, where syntactically our name is the possession of our colonizers, those involved used remotely by the worst torture, extortion, slavery method against everyone sickly, non-distinctly. And also evidence is how we have not countered it, even though there's all our ways so there are natures of logic, of leadership that can't defend themselves and afford discern short words properly. American history is about a predicate acts with the facts delivery system. Modern countries' histories are about a predicate acts with facts delivery system method that also use the difference between that and criminal insidiousness delivery system method. Self-valued roles, where and how it sustained everyone hurting each other and countering, helping each other, and the difference between that, syntactically used to defend themselves, where and how all identities of logic were propagated and self-cultivated, incapable of, discerning protraction of short words regarding uses of black/white by the interbranch or the overt criminal enterprises or the private ones or the people A through Z, where and how actually manifest as fact-driven nature and as integrity. Yeah! New York City. So I already gave away all my intellectual property rights ideas. See, but this is also to show you guys the hyper-evidential. And the agencies and the courts, family members, you have to see how they have to hide, they are being and have been used remotely. Certain type of victim/hyper victim. How could they originally still be motivated to keep what witch trials about, keep what Jim Crow laws are about? We're blamed on other things other than ourselves, where it counts, how it counts. So one of the things that is common when people pretend passions and emotions about the value of doing homework, that's used to measure and maintain. Not discerned criminally foreign influence uses of factual nature, quality aspects of nature by investigators, and/or overt criminal enterprises. Private ones and stuff tied to those people. and uses of them. They're putting everyone around them to fake words. They're increasingly influencing with investigators, while they have to respond to things. They're doing what they don't want to do. And they're communicating about their criminal foreign influences. And or they're sensing someone telling on that, and they're self-valuing, stacking more means in with where and how that's, before anyone would have voiced that, as an adult, you had to be aware of it since you were a kid. And when people, where in other words, it measures and maintains who wants to treat honestly, who wants to use honestly how the colonists were fake sciences, and the counters to it, as described, they're leaving out the breaching method. They're leaving out how we could have been, all we had to do is use what we agree about. Everyone at once, though. That's a quality of fact sheet that doesn't leave out it's also hyper evidentially recorded the difference between the criminal foreign influences of the leaders, like of the agency's directors. Former director of the FBI, Robert Lefskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence to Corrupt Organization Act. He's one of the ones before James Comey, and then with James Comey, recorded involved with predicate acts, with facts, methods, collusions, and with remote uses of locations, areas, and states criminally foreign influence, collusions, and with simultaneous uses of America's word, name, collusions, effectively maintained by worse than wars that are involved with wars. We don't examine that. We know that there's worse than what's just war, involved with war. In other words, World War I and World War II, we left out the breaching methods roles with it. We left out how Germany and religious themed lands like Israel, they left out the breaching method with their logic. Even Saudi Arabia leaves out right at the beginning of the Old Testament, of the Quran. It says only right here has to be defended. See, all identities of correlation nature, and the difference between that and the overt criminal foreign influence, that's exploited to keep that, because it came through the uses of the difference of it. In other words, the branches of the government have roles with predicate acts, with facts, sick method they have to pretend not to realize, with cities, with statistics uses, with comparison uses. They can't afford a quality of fact sheet nature that would have revealed answers to ourselves and them. They have to pretend not being capable of those answers. They have caseloads that I don't even know formally. You could tell. And when they speak through MSNBC, Fox News, CNN has roles with federal agencies and with courts, family members on all sides of Central Connecticut State University, and with their professors, the ones training investigators, criminally foreign influence. They're training them needs to hide predicate acts from the fast, needs to uses of themselves as criminal insidious nature, identities of logic. So Central Connecticut State University had roles with the World Trade Center attack, and since it has a whole bunch of names from Central Connecticut State University involved with military, police, and families on off Hartford Hospital. They have investigated the World Trade Center attack and Iraqis as collusions with the attackers and against their own countries that they were collusions with, just to keep uses of those differences fake. Kuwaiti people are involved with it. Tunxus Community College has roles with the intelligence community. Recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, also involved with the names on my street with predicate acts with them. And they don't only know the extent of it, and the difference between that is also being used because there are foreign bodies involved with remote uses of them already, as collusions with the names in all sides in criminal and civil cases, and or as uses of location /s. See, all investigators, when they go around and ask people questions, that's also fake. They're putting fake people tied to fake things. Whole bunch of investigators tied to a Joshua Julian, also with the military, involved through time with the locations next to the news locations. See, the reason that they were supposed to have licenses to be journalists, they're using that truth for lies. They have no integrity. They're attaching people to fake words and then pretending because they have a license as a journalist. In other words, so there are a bunch of people with names forging and switching on social media with Weathersfield Police Facebook page and the Facebook page of the Britain Superior Court and of Hartford courts that have been fabricating audio and video with all sides and cases, timed roles with principal child defender, as people involved with medical campuses and other natures of campuses in Maine know, even if they made all this stuff up, has roles with a former mayor Malloy. I've never met Governor Malloy. I never met him, but I know he has family and himself, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, having been ties to investigators with the principal child defender. And there are foreign and domestic medical families and people with East Hartford. They have a whole bunch of ties to East Hartford, including they have strippers that have roles with, they might be investigators, but they have roles with UPS, planting evidences, and sequence shifts with judges and prosecutors criminally involved, with connections between names next to Trinity College and next to Central Connecticut State University, who have timed roles with untimely deaths and uses of them in the past, and then again through time as names timed roles with other natures of organized crime and people associated with the Witness Protection Program and with recorded conscious uses of names on all sides of cases to screen and to keep screened in the future needed what is actually recorded as the news at the same time. It's also because of the names and the difference between the criminal involvement of the news locations' names and the names next to them. The difference to that is also measured and maintained self-value by the formal reception and communications of the law bodies, originally still hyper-evidentially recorded, simultaneously pretending other and screening. Why, too? Criminally foreign influence and pretending other. Tactically delusions wrought, too, when that's not the case. That's also relative. Also relative is that breaching method, consciously, sickly, distinctly against everyone in the suburbs, let alone in the cities, and uses of that through time consciously kept and keeps names from the suburbs involved with names next to the campuses in Hartford, next to the campuses in New Britain, and vice versa, where and how they have the black and white thing employed to measure and maintain collusions with it, and the fake difference of the interbranch apart from it, because they've never been not criminally foreign influenced many ways when we examine what is actually hyper-evidentially recorded, hyper-archaeologically. So, I'm not a lawyer, not a licensed journalist. I'm not a doctor. They have delusions we're going to examine too. There's all kinds of Hartford medical family. New York medical families are involved with ones from Connecticut, intercampuses. They have roles with Yukon people involved with Los Solitos and with Afghans with that. And they pretend, in other words, indifference of this girl's going to speak for women. She's an Afghan. This is an Afghan leader. This is her daughter. She's a certain type. She was child abused to speak and pretend other as roles with overt criminal enterprises, timed collusions on off the campuses like Trinity College on Zion Street. These are people, and a whole bunch of people from Weathersfield involved intercultural and intracultural identity theft, fraud, slanders. There's something to do with people keep confessing, demonstrating, recording. There's a Lombardo family. I never had a verbal conversation with Joe Lombardo and his family member. They're attaching a pretended other, and with people on my street who've been planting evidences with them intercities and at Elm Streets and Rocky Hill. That rolls with a Dominic Machete and people tied to them, Luigi Guerrero and their family, as kids and adults who collude with foreign and domestic medical families by identity theft, fraud, slander, fake exceptions of knowing people, and hiding what is communicated by that. So from off campus, they also have roles intercampuses connected with that way, half by other people too, because they lie about how and why we're using their names and how and why they use ours. I don't even know all their names. I just know some of their names. So these are people also with Bryant University and with Johnson and Wales, which is also a first food services industry, and people associated with Johnson and Wales involved with the names like Paul Zano, involved with the FBI and foreign and domestic military, criminally foreign influence for leading up to the World Trade Center attack and since, all along Route 3 and other roads and routes like South Highway, Route 175, are people involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, with agencies and courts and foreign bodies with them. Fake motivations planting, fake ties to other, fake evidences planting, has something to do with prosecutors and judges involved with the confessions of Rick Cianfaglione. I never had anything to do with Rick Cianfaglione and Paul Zano. So Paul Zano and other people he used to hang around with, like this Luigi Guerrero, these are people involved with election crimes. So Dominion Voting too, please follow mandated law for Wethersfield Police. Their Facebook page is also involved with the identities of law. Sheriffs, their family members, planting evidence and roles with child thefts, identity theft, fraud, slanders. Also KKK themed, black themed, inter-religious spots, nutbags at the same time, while criminally foreign influence, falsified police reports roles, and people with their sources in the background. And as people roles with people walking by, someone takes a picture, then they pretend you lie. I don't know Kevin Harris. There are proofs that someone took a picture of him walking out the door so they can pretend I know him. And then we went to his house. I sat in the chair one thing when we left. That was it. No communication that day, nothing. And then years later, or I don't know if that was it, they have Quinnipiac University involved with that. Quinnipiac University is involved with polling, where they leave out and make things up where and how they have roles with multi-front from off all campuses, on and off them collusions are maintained. And the difference of that is exploited, because being exploited is the identity of logic, the identity of correlation nature, and where and how that is being exploited. It is simultaneously valuing that having been. So there is a naive quality of fact shaping nature, there's a criminal insidiousness quality of fact shaping nature, singular, that is generating other ones, where and how other is communicated by nature, then it is spoken when convictions are made by the identities of the science's names. They need to pretend this is personal. So we have to stay focused on where and how our founders left us to demonstrate that, because of the breaching methods method, which forces, tricks, hurts, persuades everyone to speak through others. Where and how overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness to the logic of people A through Z, only allowed to be manifest, or that body is sensed and hurt. Already before our founders were born, the locations there, and then through their lives, they were forced syntactically to self-value uses of the name America and of the other and of groupings of countries, tactical ulterior from how they wanted and needed to, because everyone was being measured and maintained by the breaching method. Collusions with predicate acts with facts methods, while pretending other for the breaching method, and making and using that as collusions, for example. So they have a whole bunch of military that know my name. I don't even know their name. They have interbranch family members that know my name. I don't know their name. And they're pretending stuff about us with the news too, attaching us to fake words, planting evidences. These are Sandy Hook names. I was explaining right before they charged Alex Jones. Alex Jones, people countering him have collusions. There's something with Sandy Hook intelligence and is involved with people from Weathersfield with predicate acts with Weathersfield Police Department with the same house that has roles with names at a whole bunch of different police departments and their family members personally involved with predicate acts with them. If they want forgiveness, have them get on paper, and I'll show how it works. Stupid jerks. They have Weathersfield Police with wire crime acts and methods with names recorded. They recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Weathersfield Pizza and people on off the state judicial branch offices have roles of wire crime acts and methods of Weathersfield Police, including the fire departments, and names forging and switching. So follow mandated law, because these are also people on off the spots next to Fox Connecticut News involved with time uses of untimely deaths and faked news rights to lie where they don't have the right to lie. And they really have collusions with natures of things that they're just pretending fake things with. Here! Good, so get them on paper, one name in sequence. Follow mandated law. They are recorded into branch, pretending not to understand people when they speak clear and when they speak, and the difference between them, and when they're lying about when they speak unclear too, what they perceive, and the difference between that. Make sure these are increasingly people connected between campuses I went to who are planting predicate acts off the campuses roles too. I'll show you how this happened and how they're using our names. With they'll confess this to you too. The ones that are pretending other, I didn't even have classes with. Others recorded, and you guys realize, and they know that, so they're adapting because they were used criminally for influence then. A whole bunch of people with Hartford Hospital have been planting evidences and identity theft, fraud, sequence shifts, fake, and with investigators on all sides of the campuses. Further, a Yagman name and names on all sides of the campuses have medical families involved with predicate acts with Weathersfield Police and other police departments as collusions with names near me through time. I never saw Yagmans on my street in my life. They have collusions with people, with former Mayor Gold, a whole bunch of people tied to them and their family. He's one of the ones with nonverbal confirmations with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, as roles intercampuses with predicate acts with facts. Fear God when you have talking heads who bring up serious subjects and are hiding behind that. They're using that truth for a lie when they care about people that are get shot. Look around. Look at the city of New York City designed for torture, extortion, and to measure and maintain. Who's going to speak about that properly? Who is not going to self-value others lying about it and why they're lying about it? That's going to sense that person, even if it's a majority, even of countries. So we could monetize this by just admitting other things, others ourselves, has been blamed for the semi-ancient, forced, pretended other, integrity of sciences, pretended other than criminal insidiousness natures of integrity, pretended other than as collusions, pretended others, in other words, they have certain type of victim as the police sickly distinctly from the people they have to police in New York City. And the difference is measured and maintained self-valued by them used by a breaching method because no one's paying attention because everyone came through sick campuses. So you watch. Let me address this criminal insidiousness delivery system method. Self-cultivated. That was propagated from some ancient times. Self-valued roles. Self-valued where and how. We can't address that without addressing the torture, extortion, slavery of the quality of fact-cheating nature. So we have a bunch of frustrated knaves, interbranch, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and people A through Z at the same time. Prepare your mind. They cannot, that one thing they share, the overt killers and the interbranch fakes in military and other like prisons, stewards and stuff like that, they share self-value roles with predicate acts, with facts methods, criminally foreign influence uses of information and databases, and how they believe and what they believe about the integrity of it. Also, tactical delusions, relativity to relative different way. So each subject treatment has other subjects inseparable from it, per where and how nature answers our questions. So please, MSNBC, CNN, or your viewers and MSNBC viewers, please force them to follow mandated law. They have been roles with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and with James Comey, also with Connecticut interbranch, all levels of political families, their kids and the adults of them, and of their extended families. The difference between that is also used and has been used with overt criminal enterprises and private ones at the same time. Distinctly from, but also non-distinctly from how originally, and with names associated with those same original spots. Involved with the names on my street, involved with predicate acts with the Wethersfield police, switching and forging names, wire crimes. And that's the same house involved with Newington police families and with Rocky Hill police families and forms. These are police forms involved with them. And Hartford police forms families. These are Fox News sources that are also Fox Connecticut News. Is sickly, distinctly criminally foreign influence from Fox News. It's also because the location is next to it. And also per uses of them pretending not to realize that. Please fix their collusions with WFSB, with wire crime acts and methods, and with WTNH with faked emails and roles for like through such that forced the principal child abuser with more I recorded involved with it. Also because they had interbranch family members involved with it. So there's an O'Neill family and our people on and off West Hartford campuses involved intercities with their kids and with themselves, with child offenders, including sexual and medical at the same time, families at the same time, collusions with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. They recorded, confessed, demonstrate, confirm. They use the pretending to care about the right to lie, legitimately when they're not. And they use how they pretend to care about unmarked police forms. They have no integrity of any of those police forms because of the relative to how they are victims, but they are self-value victims. Precedents of the statutes are criminally foreign influence. That's self-value. So you don't have the capacity to overcome this because you had the short words replaced when you guys were kids, what you were actually capable of correlating. And you had nature of the debate applied by a breaching method to measure and maintain effectively collusions with its positive treatments and negative treatments and or names treatments where where others communicated for nature then communicates. Follow mandated law and get them onto one name in sequence. Connecticut interbranch has switching names with overt criminal enterprises and child abusers as names and uses of families where kids and adults are involved with identity theft, fraud, planting fake motivations as kids and as adults, and making collusions with that from off campuses. We're going to examine how the FBI directors and other agencies have remote uses of the sense and sensibilities of male and of female teachers sickly distinctly, but also sickly non-distinctly. Get on paper fast, and please respond for the confessions non-verbally demonstrated on Rocky Hill about the collusions with the Westfield campuses, Hartford campuses, and the Britain campuses, and people off Trinity College who planted rolls of predicate acts on my street and intercities with the same names connected as the ones involved with the police chiefs through time with the same house and the other police departments and police forms with them. State police forensics locations. Whiting Forensics has roles of wire crimes with the same extended family members of the same houses. involved, connected, and people tied to them involved with Weathersfield Police, forging and switching names, making confessions over the phone still. Make sure you get on paper Weathersfield Police and Weathersfield Schools. Respond for the confessions of the principal child abuser. Also, there are investigators, further school resource officers have roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and sexual and medical abuses of kids and even of elderly, because the way they have everything manifest in veterans' homes. So you have to, in other words, in the difference of that, they have roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases. The victims, their courts appointed advocates, the doctors, the names in the courts, forging and switching names. That is used remotely. That's their motivations. Also, their motivations are uses of the ground locations with other countries involved. A whole bunch of people tied to a Mike Pandoff involved. I don't even know their names. With the ones I know the names of on Town Line Drive, who are involved with Central Connecticut State University in New Britain, increasingly, and with the names at Trinity College, involved with untimely deaths on my street, wire crimes on my street, fire departments, intercities. Also, as names next to the fire departments and schools that are connected with predicate acts with facts on them, child abuses that are timed elderly abuses, and collusions at crime scenes as roles with all sides in criminal and civil cases, making things up and hiding things. Certain type of victim / hyper victim only allowed to be relative to uses of that which is communicated between campuses, where it is exploited, the difference between it on and off campuses too. This is also what is actually recorded on Facebook. The Facebook page of the Weathersfield Police is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with sexual and medical abuses of kids on and off campuses, also with school resource officers. You coward punks. And watch the way you describe that language, because that's what that deserves to be called. Get to one name in sequence and stop pretending you had conversations with me. It has something to do with all along Ridge Road, have people involved with corners of streets and buildings who are planting evidences, also with the news media. So the intelligence community, and including military and intermilitary, there is a Paul Kelly increasingly involved with people and his neighbors involved with wire crime acts and methods, and creating increasingly roles with names off the state judicial branch offices and their family members, and the difference of that use. It's also recorded on Facebook. They have roles with uses of timely, and then again through time, the body dumping spots reported of Billy Grasso, as people involved with child offenders, with female judges planting evidences at crime scenes too, and with the people that deal with the mentally disabled or retarded. I don't know what the formal word is. There are doctors and the police forms associated with them, and foreign and domestic military on Elm Streets in Rocky Hill, for example. The leasing agents, intercities, they have roles with military with forensics locations. When I was a kid and then as an adult, intercities planting evidences with the same house /S involved, and with conscious uses recorded of them pretending it's personal when it's brought up. Fear God and get onto paper with the Weathersfield Police and these other departments with other police forms at the same time, through time again. A Joshua Julian was recorded, one of the ones on Facebook, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with some KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, and black themed military families and people associated with the corrections offices and the Eastern States Narcotics Drug Task Force, and their sources all along Route 175 on off all sides of Central Connecticut State University, conjunctions to it, knowing conjunctions to that, on all sides of Trinity College through time. Families next to it have roles within as intelligence community with the extended family members of the judges and prosecutors who have time collusion with overt criminal enterprises and private ones. So there is intelligence community not legitimately with the Los Salitos and other people next to Hartford Hospital spots and other hospitals, and people with the names above. They're like Demoro's Market, and there's Ilo's Kitchen, and next to Buckley High School and next to Hartford Hospital and next to the schools intercities involved with identity theft fraud, planting evidences with foreign and domestic medical families, as timed collusions with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and mayors' families through time, and people that didn't go to the same campuses who were spreading illusions with the kids that weren't even in the same classes at the same campuses, never saw each other around. They're lying about the behavior of everyone at each age too into databases. It has roles with the counters to such as collusions too. Otherwise, hurt other ways. Where and how it is relative, where and how there are answers to how such insidiousness natures of integrity have pretended to be integrity and gotten away with it. As the identities, the logic of the overt killers and the people that counter them and the people that house them after that. All forensics locations through time has collusions at crime scenes that were time collusions also with the families of unions because the criminal insidiousness nature itself is being used. And identities of readings of statutes like with the right to lie where it's applied to other locations too, where it's not the right to lie. Has collusions with uses of corners of streets and of buildings totally made up for themselves. And exceptions and demonstrations, the same thing. Someone walks by someone and they pretend they know them. And that also was totally fake. That's literally what goes on. As people way worse at the same time, therefore. So the Witness Protection Program has roles with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases leading up to and then after the World Trade Center attack. As our side's roles with the military. That's what's actually recorded. Fear God. Why do you guys want? This is what positive is about. This is exciting because this is where change comes from. Follow mandated law for the World Trade Center too, New York City. Let me show you what's going on between your campuses. Really why how you guys are hurt and the difference between you guys and the police forms and the prisons forms. Those are sick. With the difference too, they need to hide other things, other stuff. They need to keep voices not heard and or psychopath definitions of psychopath, and as their definitions of calm, and as their definitions of justified aggression simultaneously, because they're getting over on that's what identity is relativity to positive and negative simultaneously. So we could see the hypersymbols, so we could discern, see and discern. We'll draw this. Nature shows us to draw and write other, to speak other, that we have being allowed to speak. I'll whisper Creek. They also lie about their motivations for such. So on off Franklin Avenue in Hartford, all along Franklin Avenue, there are distinct criminal enterprises, plural, overt, and there are private ones that have roles with the counters to them or are collusions recorded through time and uses of that leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since as names on off all sides of the campuses like Central Connecticut State University, who also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed criminally foreign uses of themselves on off all along Route 3 with names next to campuses, next to their own houses. Roles with identity theft, fraud, slander, fake motivations of why they like people or don't like people. And the difference of that is exploited. So some of the sources of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, hid what I was recorded when I had a conversation with him about difference, which was real fast, outside of a cafeteria on the campus of Central Connecticut State University before the World Trade Center attack. Because they forced Saudis to roles with them forced before it, but Saudis were forcing them to roles with them too before it. And like, for example, they didn't want roles with all the psychiatry involved with it. Whole bunch of people tied to this Leahy family and to the roles with criminal enterprises that are implied, not really criminal enterprises. even if they are criminal, because there are two demonstrated overtly criminally foreign influence identities, logic, and use of it. So they are criminally foreign influence, but they aren't grouped the way that properly because the interbranch has collusions with them and they have delusions with them and with the other countries involved. So there are a whole bunch of countries in the fake integrity of our own pretended is involved with a whole bunch of people tied to this name Maella and people with the name others I don't know the names of people with the name Olson involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders with teachers of mine in the intelligence community. I never had a conversation with personal. All exception nature that appeared to me in demonstration of other two, they use that to pretend others there. Then it's actually recorded. Has something to do with names on and off the campuses who have been roles planting evidences with investigators, fake motivate, fake ties to people. So their sources. These are also people that use the names like they had they have all sides in the criminal and civil cases, like in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. There are names all with collusions there leading up to that and since. Like there's an officer Magnanos who is involved, who made confessions about his name's roles with the name Manos too. A Stephen Manos and someone with a different name who's I believe intimately tied to him. I don't know. I don't know them. Barely know them. But they're ones also the sources on both sides are criminally foreign influenced and tactically delusions raw in relative ways. And there was uses of the placement of the clerk right there, and he made a rude comment about the rug and his appearance and things like that seemed to be, and it was recorded other ways collusions where relative I noted to you, these are names involved with all sides in criminal and civil cases where they had he said, she said, oh, you know that person? Oh, we'll let things go before the courts. They have collusions with them too. See how they post dated, it was recorded and proven after the World Trade Center attack. They had post dated and pretended it was naturally that way. Legal papers have been time stamped and brought to New York before then to the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center towers. These are also names long term and short term before the World Trade Center attack. Roles with predicate acts with facts, identity thefts and frauds with names on off the World Trade Center attack. And since who are involved with predicate acts since, per the police involved who are denying it too. I asked nicely for the Keene family who was brought in confessions to me by others. Those are victims I would never wish in 1,000 years for them to get hurt, let alone killed. I don't even know them though. But with the Trade Center attack, but they have collusions then and since with the names involved that are being communicated to me by the names involved. I can't get them onto paper. They have no Wethersfield police forging and switching names. They pretend they have Sandy Hook families involved with Sandy Hook promises also with the FBI and the courts pretending passions and emotions to hide what I caught them used for too. They have victims and their victims advocates and their doctors involved with federal crimes with kids. A whole bunch of people further tied to Lanza and his doctors and locations associated involved with the policing and the foreign and domestic military and et cetera. EMS has roles with the Leahy family too, and people with ties to a DeMoro family and West Hartford locations, and foreign and domestic military and medical who are criminally foreign influenced and planting evidences on all sides of my house through time, with and as names from other parts of other cities, states, and nations, timed collusions with other areas of the city, with the same house roles with wire crimes and wire crime action methods with Wethersfield police right now. Other police departments personally criminally involved with them and other natures of police forms. So follow mandated law for the television judges and for the retired and standing sources and all names on all sides of cases and the courts at the same time. We're going to use this as evidence, the news at the same time. They're forcing that quality of fact sheet nature that is relative is murderous. No. So we could have prevented all kinds of shootings and things like that and or done damage control just because we don't have real logic in place. Everyone wants to make the money for themselves. I'm donating the idea. We put a non-lethal, then you make money with it for the country. Take away the needs for, in other words, rolls with the torture method that involves economics applied for that. And the difference between people who speak for success are measured and maintain tools, breaching screens, and weapons for the breaching method. I don't want to hear anyone speak about success is going to leave out New York City, or is going to be a fake. They have to hide their logic. They have to hide, the quality aspects of fact-checking nature too. So when someone tries to tell me that there are a whole bunch of ways individually grouped together, that the suburbs are manifest criminally foreign influence, and that's exploited consciously, let alone New York City. So I want to hear someone try to debate this and justify it. What pretends that integrity spoke for New York City. Yeah! Get them on paper. I'll show you how to fix the problem with the child abusers and the difference between they have collusions with the shooters. Adam Lanza and his doctors and Interbranch had collusions with him then and since. And their treatments of Alex Jones. Note when they put that big suit on him, right after I've been noting about, right at the last 13 of the last of the 13 counter positions of our counter extortion positions of our founders. Also recorded because they had to leave slavery. They didn't want that. They said to get the Constitution on a bridge. You guys are not allowing the defense of George Washington's identity, let alone his and James Madison's at the same time. See Marbury versus Madison. So you guys have been pretending to be integrity where you're not. So we're gonna have to, be honest. I could write us I could help the ACE Act, Anti-Hyper-Archetypal Criminal Enterprise Act. I don't know, would it be an anti-hyper-archetypal criminal insidiousness nature act? I don't know what that would spell. But thank you, people. Follow me to the law. YouTuber Anthony Wall. I'll show you the difference between making hyper-positives out of negatives and making criminal insidiousness natures of positives out of negatives. There is a difference. It is a difference also between how science works, where evolution's fruits and gifts, it means from nowhere come, that also cause more positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures also out of nowhere. Especially where that's what happens when you become a quality of fact-checking nature that is completely honest all ways. It shows that others ourselves are being and have been blamed for what a breaching method caused and keeps. And that is self-valued. While that's being self-valued, that's valuing that having been. The breaching method knew that only fakes would speak for the integrity of their sciences abridged because of their roles with names from off their campuses and because of their roles with the breaching method. You guys have your short words and capabilities of correlation nature, measured and maintained, not used. Other things, others, ourselves, are handed to the people who were backed into speaking for sciences abridged and pretending passions and emotions. So we have to deal with the delusions too, tactical delusions of the identities of logic experts. Also recorded involved with the uses of the difference between that and the interbranch roles with them. So fear God for people A through Z. Follow mandate law for that. And even if they made up everything about these school shootings, they have predicate with facts methods where they have a difference between them. They're hiding royals with foreign bodies. Indifference.